It's not showing up as live, but yet.
So are we on? Good afternoon. Calling the meeting to order for the State Election Board on May 14th, 2026, for a special called meeting. We have several agenda items today, but first, I'd like to ask Member Janelle King to lead with an invocation.
All right, everyone, thank you so much, God, for this opportunity. Thank you for allowing us to meet, to come together, to do the work of the people, which is your work, which is what you desire for us. We thank you, Lord, and we ask, God, that you give us the wisdom, give us the leadership, the guidance to make the right decisions, to do the right thing. We thank you, God, for all the information that has been presented before us and that will be presented. And Lord, we just ask, God, that you just continue to be in the midst, continue to help lead us and guide us. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And now, for Pledge of Allegiance, we have a flag here that you can see in the background, in my background, if you'd like, and could we all stand? And Member Grubbs, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Glad to see all of you here. Just a reminder for the next meeting on June 3rd and 4th. It will be held, the State Election Board meeting will be held at Lanier Technical College at the Forsyth Conference Center. That's in Cumming, Georgia, and it will be June 3rd and 4th. Now on to the first item on the agenda, reports, a report by our Executive Director, James Mills. James, mic is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the board for allowing me to take a little bit of your time. I won't take up much, but I do have a couple of important issues. I would like to ask the board, I don't have to do this, but I want to do it because in full transparency, I just think it's a good thing to do. This board has graciously given me the authority to hire and employ the people needed to run the agency. And we have been blessed with a great group of employees. But we've reached a level now to where I believe we need a deputy director, and I don't think we have to leave the office to find one. I would like to ask this board to give a vote of support for the recommendation that I'm going to make today, and that is that I'd like to recommend that Hope Cohen become the Deputy Director of the Georgia State Election Board Agency. Those of you that know Hope Cohen and you've seen her work, you've seen that how Hope has helped us in every facet, continue to develop this agency. It's my own fault. I'm not being critical or judging anyone. But I've been here almost a year. I've not been on a vacation. I've not taken days off other than state holidays. And knowing that I'd have a deputy director who could handle things while I'm away, there's nobody better suited to do that than Hope Cohen. And Hope could do it. I've spoken with her about it, and she's up for the task. I'd like to just ask the board if you would consider taking a formal position to endorse this decision. I guess that would require, if you agree, that would require, somebody to make a motion that we move Hope into the position of Deputy Director for the Georgia State Election Board officially.
I don't have any issues with doing that. Oh, I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you, Janelle.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yes.
I'll speak louder. No, I was saying I don't have any issues with making that motion. I'm so grateful to have Hope. I've seen her work very closely with you and with this board, and I think she'll be an excellent she's an excellent recommendation. So I support that by making the motion that we support our executive director James Mills in his decision to move Hope Cohen into the deputy executive director role.
And I happily second that motion. I love Hope. I think she's done an excellent job. She's always very well prepared, and she's shown that she will definitely work over and above what's required to get us what we need. So I wholeheartedly support that.
Well, thank you, Member King and Member Grubbs, for that motion and second. Is there the motion is to approve the appointment of and promotion of Hope Cohen as Deputy Executive Director for the State Election Board. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None. Passed unanimously. Hope Cohen will be our Deputy Executive Director. Thank you.
Congrats.
James, the next item on your agenda, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank the board for the support there. This board's always been supportive, and I can't say thank you enough. And Hope is going to do a great job. You already know the job that she does, and she's brought us forward in so many different areas. So I'm excited for her. She deserves the promotion. I thank you for supporting me. The next item that I'd like to ask this board to consider would be to ask you to consider asking me as executive director to come up with a virtual license private investigators plan. It would be a statewide program that I would put into place. I haven't finished developing it, and that's why I would like to ask the board to formally ask me to develop it. At the end of every fiscal year in the state, sometimes there are surplus funds and sometimes there are not. This year, we're going to have a little bit of surplus funds, and I would like to try to encumber as many of those funds as possible. And that's why I'm bringing this up now. The state year ends at the end of June, and if I don't encumber those funds, we lose those funds. So I think it's important for the agency going forward. At any time, you could say to me, look, I don't like the direction this is going, using the virtual licensed private investigators, and I just feel we need to stop. I would report to the board every month, or every time we had a meeting. I would report to you and give you an update where we are, what we're doing. Is it working? Is it not working? We realize this is new. These people are going to have to be vetted, background checks, et cetera, et cetera. So there's still a lot of details to be worked out. But I do have a plan to where we could actually make investigations on complaints happen much quicker than what they have been happening in the past. And this is critical to just enforcing what is right and the law and the rules. And I just asked the board to consider that. It would just simply be the board asking me to develop this plan and move forward with it. And again, at any time, the board could say, stop, we don't like the way this is going.
I don't understand what you mean by virtual investigation.
It's a fair question, Board Member Grubbs. What I basically mean is we don't have it in place right now, so we're still working on it. But I'll give you an example. For example, let's say, and I've broken it out. I have a rough draft, but it's still under development. That's why I haven't shown it, but I don't mind showing it. it would say, for example, in DeKalb County, we would have one private investigator that we could go to on a regular basis when DeKalb County investigations came up that involved DeKalb. Gwinnett County, we would have one licensed PI that we would go to. Cobb County, we would have one private investigator, and we would agree on a per hour contract to work through with them. And I've done that for right now. I have about 10 to 11 to 12 counties that if cases were to come up, then we could quickly assign it to them. They would have already been vetted. It'll take a while to get this in place and get these people vetted. So that's why I'm calling it a virtual.
Okay, so do you have a budget for that at this point?
It's a guess budget because I don't know how much money I'm going to have, but I don't mind telling you what my guess budget is to implement something like that with the 11 to 12 PIs. And again, they wouldn't be employees. They would be either contract or go through a vendor that is a business that has PIs, and they would have to be approved by the state. There would be a background check done on that vendor. And to answer your question, my numbers that I've calculated would come up, if everything were to be in place, it would be somewhere around $250,000. Now that's that's a lot of money, but when you look at hiring investigators, you got to hire a full-time investigator. You got to pay salary. You have to pay benefits. I mean, 2 employees could come close to that number by the time you pay all those benefits.
So I totally get that, and I understand the need to go outside and contract. My only issue is right now there are some things of a legal nature that I would like to that I think we need to talk about, and perhaps some independent legal review and input. So I would certainly be happy to look at it with a written plan put forth and a firm budget, and then that also figures into I understand that our budget has been cut by $300,000 in
Yes.
the final passage. So I think we need to look at a budget first and where we're at on our spend before we, before we go out on that. But I think it's a great plan. I just would like to see something firmer in writing before we head that direction and spend any money.
I wouldn't be asking this board to spend any money at this point. I would be just asking the board to give me, say, hey, we like the idea, the concept, move forward with a plan, come back to us with budget and numbers. Right now, it's kind of difficult for me because I don't know what all those numbers are at the moment due to we're right here at the end of the year. I'm about to find out how many funds we'll have left over, and I want to encumber as many surplus funds as I can right now so that we could have 26 funds that could possibly be spent in FY27, which will start July 1. And I hope I'm explaining that enough for you to understand what I'm saying.
No, I understand. I think we need to look at overall needs together, and as far as where we're at for the rest of the year, and then where we're going to be given the news. And I'm not playing victim here with the funds being cut, because there were funds cut across the state with a number of different programs. But I just want to get a better handle on where we are financially before we do encumber. I understand your point, but I think we need a firm idea of what kind of money we're talking about.
Director Mills, if we push this to June, would that impact your ability to be able to hold those funds for 26?
I'm going to have to make a decision on this probably the first part of June in order to encumber the funds without losing them. Now, if you don't do it, early before the last month of the year, then it's not always easy to get a last minute encumbered fund in place. That's why I'm trying to do it now. to at least start with a plan.
Is it the 30th of this month? I mean, when you say the first
It's
part of June, is it after the 3rd, after our board
the,
meeting?
I mean, technically the year goes all the way through the end of June, the fiscal
Yeah,
year,
that's what, okay.
but we get dates sent to us from the Secretary of State who encumbers the funds for us. And, I just don't want to wait till the last week of June and then be told I'm too late. I'd much rather have it in place by the 1st of June and know that those funds have been encumbered.
You're muted, Dr. Jan.
James, is it a question of, if you don't use it, you lose it, sort of, availability of those funds?
That is the way the budget works across the board with state agencies. If you don't use the money that's allocated in your budget, then the leftover goes back into the state treasury. And no agency should just spend money to be spending money. But in light of the fact of what Member Grubbs brought up, the $300,000 cut that we had, that pushes me to try to encumber as much as I can to absorb the $300,000 cut that's going to happen starting July 1.
Well, that brings up some other issues as far as the data entry specialist that I know we had talked about in that position, because we have got to do something about having better access into the cases and what the statuses are. And, does that take that into account? I don't feel like we have all the information for me to say, yes, go encumber funds, especially, when there are some legal concerns that I have that I think we need to look at as well.
Okay. I mean, actually, I can encumber the funds without bringing this before the board. I just want to do that because I want to keep you up to speed on what I'm doing. When I started on June the 2nd last year, I was forced with making these decisions and didn't have much knowledge at all at that time. But now I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn. But to answer your question, Sally, can you tell me again exactly what you're looking for? Because I want to answer it if I can.
Well, I just want to see a layout of where we are in the budget, how much money is left to spend, when
Okay.
is the last time that we have to spend it, and look at other potential needs. I think we need a priority of where we want to spend the money. Because we've got personnel that, you were looking at possibly hiring with a data entry person. We still don't have any, and I'm not saying fault or anything like that, but we have no consistent way to keep up with what cases are open, what cases have been closed, what's the status of the cases, all that kind of stuff. We still have the website, which you're on top of, I know, but we still have to get that going. How much of that has been paid? I live and breathe by budget professionally, so I have to have an idea. This is all very nebulous to me until we see what the obligations are and what the resources are.
Okay. The data entry person has not been brought on board yet, but we have made a decision in that position, and we have the monies to pay for it. She would start on June the 1st. That is the plan right now. But she has already received an offer letter, and orientation has been set for her to go through on June the 1st.
Now, having a data entry analyst and specialist, and I agree with Member Grubbs that I would like SCB to have more control over the cases and whatnot, but it's kind of hard to do that when we don't investigate them. When the SOS is the investigator and we don't have investigative power, then we can't have but so much control over the cases. So I do think there is a need to have funding for additional investigators that are SEB investigators. I agree with Member Grubbs that there should be a detailed plan as far as the budget goes. But I absolutely support you going and encumbering those funds so that we can have those funds available. Once you have the plan, we can then vote on the plan later. But I do think that we need to move forward with ensuring that we have those funds recouped and held if we can.
The plan can be stopped at any moment by this board. I just feel the urgency so that we don't lose these funds. And as you point out, Member King, right, if we don't have investigators, we can't investigate cases. And I'm in the process now, and I'll go ahead and jump forward with a little bit of that, just so you'll know. We have brought on 2 part-time investigators. They will go through orientation on Monday of next week. That doesn't mean we're going to be able to keep all the cases that we want because we only have 2 investigators coming. However, we've been hard at work. We're doing that within the scope of the budget that we have right now, and we're solvent.
Okay. Madam Vice Chair, I'm not sure if we need to make a motion on this or if we should table this. I'm not sure what the next moves would be. I know Member Grubbs is not prepared to move forward with it, and I'm prepared to move forward as long as we know we'll have a plan when it's time to implement. But I'm just thinking about the funds. I just want to make sure that we have the funds, but I will follow the lead of the board.
I can tell you this, we have the funds under the current budget of this year.
Right.
Going into next year, because of the $300,000 cut, I'm not sure how much funds we're going to have.
Okay.
I'm just going to have to put a pencil to it.
Okay.
That's why I'm really wanting to encumber as much as I can in this year's budget.
So do you don't, so like you said, you don't need us to take a vote so that you can go ahead and encumber the funds. You need us
No.
to take a vote, or you really don't need us to take a vote, correct? When it comes to any of this.
It's not needed. I just would prefer to have it because it's a new concept. Licensed private investigators investigating cases. I want to make sure we do everything right. And that's important for all of us.
I have an echo here. So James, I think this is a really great idea to have a virtual license program that we can use as needed, depending on the demand of the number of cases we have. And as my understanding is, it provides for statewide coverage of investigators to investigate cases all over the state, which gives us the flexibility to cover all of Georgia. James, would you work with Ms. Grubbs as far as making sure that her legal questions or her financial questions are satisfactorily answered? But considering that, I think it would be very positive to move forward with this and begin the working through the channels that have to be worked through to get this initiated and implemented. And it, of course, as you said, at any time we can alter this plan or program. But we've been wanting to have our own investigators. We've been asked to use our own investigators. We've felt the need and certainly expressed our own opinions about having our own investigators investigate cases and improve the output and the timeliness of hearing complaints and cases, possible violations. So I think this is a great solution for us, considering that all the questions would be answered.
I'd be more than willing to commit that if I can't answer any questions that any of you may have, including sitting down with Member Grubbs and showing you whatever questions you may have, you know, I'll either find the answers to, or I want you to know the answers. I don't want to be withholding anything from anybody. And if, you know, if you are not satisfied with those answers, you could always come back to this board and say, I can't support this going forward.
And we are hiring a data entry specialist as of June 1st, correct?
Yes, that is correct. They've been sent an offer letter. They've accepted. The background work has been done, and they are set to come and go through orientation on June 1. And the only reason they couldn't start earlier is because this person just happens to be involved in our voting processes. And so we have an election going on and they can't start right now.
And is it correct that offers have been sent and signed by 2 part-time investigators?
That is correct. And we anticipate them coming on board officially, going through orientation on Monday, and I'm excited about that.
Right. Well, I would like to make a motion to approve implementing a virtual licensed PI program. A determined amount can be encumbered by the executive director from the FY26 funds, as determined by the director, and the director will be solely responsible for the establishment of the program, recruiting, training, certifying, administering, and supporting the program. And I would ask the director to provide a summary report for us, for the board, every month as part of the executive director's report, so that we can stay apprised and abreast of what is going on and how the plan is working. And we could schedule that to be a report to be delivered after the minutes of each board meeting.
I second.
Is there any discussion?
I just don't feel like I have enough information to vote on something like this. I just found out about it. And yes, we do need investigators. But until I see the budget on where we're at on spending and that kind of thing, this is not something that I could vote for. I'm sorry.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
No. So motion carries 2-1 for the executive director to begin the implementation of the program.
Thank you very much. And I commit to keep you posted all along. And Member Grubbs, I'll meet with you at your convenience and try to answer any questions that you may have. The last item that I have is very similar to what I just said, except this would involve trying to encumber some funds for data specialists on cases that we have. You know, I've listened to the board be presented cases many times, and you have one county saying one thing about the voter registration list, and you have the complainant saying something else, and you don't know who to believe because you have 2 separate sets of facts being presented. if I could contract with or use a temp service that specializes with data analysts who could definitively say to the board, we've looked at case number so and so, and we agree with the facts that the complainant is presenting or with the facts that the county is presenting, that would help you as a board make a better informed decision. You would know immediately when that case was brought up, look, what they're saying is true or it's not true. And then you would make your decision. So what I would try to do is I would try to encumber funds for a temp agency or to explore contracting with data specialists that we know. I mean, they're all across the state, they're all across the nation, but we would just try to, that way we could assign our investigators could say, I need for this data specialist to come back and tell me, is this correct or not? And then when the case was presented to you as a board, you would know and you could make a even better informed decision. So it's the same concept, but I would be encumbering, and I don't have an amount for you. I can tell you that what I've looked at would be for a year-long process would probably cost about $50,000. But that is a guess on a program that I've never done. But again, we could stop it at any point. We could say this is, the product that we're getting is not worth the money we're spending. But we've got some funds that I can encumber for this, and that would let me save money to spend on other items that you may deem we want to do in FY27. I'm trying to squeeze every dollar I can out of the 26 budget because I know we've got this $300,000 cut with. That's why these last minute items had come up because I didn't know until the 12th, the changes in the budget.
I guess I'm trying to understand the role of the data analyst. I don't know if having someone to kind of be the middleman, and they're not legal or have any type of real standing. I don't know if that's beneficial. I'm wondering though if we could take that 50,000 and attach it to the 200,000 that you're wanting to encumber for the private investigators, and that the 50,000 can go towards providing them with some type of assistant or someone that can work alongside them, because that's what the private investigators will be doing, right? Is giving us all the information we need to make a decision. So I would support them having some assistance, which could be these data analysts, but I don't think they should be separate or, just be a whole new program. I think that might get a little confusing, and I don't know how that's going to stand up in court. if
Well,
you know.
let me apologize. I didn't explain it very well, maybe. They would work with the private investigator because private investigators are not going to be data specialists.
Right.
They might not even be experts on a voter roll. But
Okay.
if you had a data specialist who was, it's like building a house. They might not do the plumbing very well, but they know how to do the framing. And so you sub out that portion of it. And that's what I'm talking about doing. They would work alongside of the investigation on the case.
Okay.
Just like asking for a technical.
Unmute.
Unmute your.
Is this like asking for a technical expert, like a computer expert or somebody with knowledge about cybersecurity or looking at log files in a database system?
It is exactly like that. And in fact, it's like for lack of a better term, it's almost like a police investigation. When a crime occurs, a lot of times those policemen or law enforcement officers are not medical doctors, but they'll say, hey, I need the blood work on this. And so they sub it out and they get the blood work back from somebody who specializes in that area. And then that helps them make a better informed decision. It's the same process here that I'm talking about.
I understand if you can encumber some funds of the 26 budget for these technical experts, I guess is what you're calling them. If you don't need them, then this money is just not spent. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Once you encumber money for a specific item, it can't be changed. But the only way you can encumber it is to be specific, or else it can't be encumbered.
I've certainly seen plenty of cases heard where I wished we had had a technical expert, and there have been many cases that I've asked for a technical expert to be present to answer my questions as cases were heard, and more times than not, a technical expert was not available or did not appear at our hearing. So I would very much like to have the ability to call on a technical expert. And I would expect that they would come with some credentials to provide solid opinions for what they're being asked about.
Either way, if you went through a contract or if you went through a data temp contract service, those people have to be vetted. You can't just go out and hire anybody or contract with anybody. They have to have background checks. They have to be cleared. All of that is done. The only thing with a temp service is that it allows you to not have to get into all the benefits, and the temp service handles all that part of it for you.
So what I'm hearing is the role or the responsibility of these individuals would be to assist the private investigators with kind of the minutia work, the detailed work, the expert type of work. Whereas the private investigator may discover that there's foul play or there's something here that's a little off. The experts, these individuals will come in and be able to detail what's going on, what's happening according to the state code. I'm assuming they can attach a code to the findings of the investigators to help build out the summary.
Yes, and I've seen this board be presented with complaints that come in that deal purely with large numbers of data. And those cases, we never see them. They just don't come up. I can't answer all those reasons as to why, but if you had a data specialist person who emphasized with a specialty in data, then they should be able to say, let's say there's a question of, I'm just making up numbers, but let's say there's a question of 30,000 residency questions in the voting of an election. Well, one individual investigator would look at that probably and say, there's no way I can investigate 30,000 residency questions. But a data entry specialist or a data specialist person could figure that out to come back with, this is based on what I know and my knowledge. This is about a 95% margin of error or whatever. But they would give you a much more definitive answer versus right now you just don't get an answer.
So I hear what you're saying, and there's a very big difference between a data analyst and a data entry person. So we're not talking about the data entry person that we were just talking about. We're talking about someone that strictly looks at data. Maybe if you want to analyze slog files, or like with the DVS order problem, if you want someone to analyze something like that, that's what you're talking about.
Member Grubbs, I'm glad you mentioned slog files. That is a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Okay. And so this goes back to the conversations, like, for example, that we had during I think it was a meeting when we were in Barrow County and we were talking about, Fulton County doesn't have an analyst to analyze the voting data and that kind of stuff. And I guess only the Secretary of State's office does. And we need to get that information and that kind of thing, which I'm 100% behind. But again, I would need to see, I'm in business, and if I had an employee that came to me with a plan, they would have to come with a written plan, with a budget, with a specific description and that kind of thing. So I'm all behind us, if the money allows, but I don't even know whether it would allow that or not because I don't have a budget to see where we're at on our spend for the annual year. Today's May 14th. I understand the fiscal year is June 30th for the state. So for me, I'm all behind us having a data analyst or being able to, look at data. I'm not a data expert. I'm not bad with data, but I don't know anything about the slog files and I don't know anything about, the specifics of the mechanical things that happen with data in certain aspects and that kind of thing. I think there's certain reasons to dig into that, but I can't make a decision without something in writing in front of my face with the current budget and what we have left to spend. So if there's going to be a request for a vote, know that those are the things that I would need to be able to vote intelligently, because as we all know, bureaucracy is something that I don't like, and I don't want to just approve something that it's a nebulous amount of dollars from a nebulous budget with a nebulous plan. I've got to have specifics to be able to vote on that if there's going to be a vote forthcoming.
And that's very fair, Member Grubbs. I'm just asking really for a vote of the concept. I didn't realize this $300,000 cut was coming down the pike until day before yesterday. And I thought, oh my
Nobody in the
goodness.
state did. Nobody in the
Yeah.
state did. So I get it.
So that put me in a scramble mode. I had some of these ideas going forward that I had hoped to incorporate in FY27 and bring before y'all in a more methodical way. But when the cut came, I realized, you know what? I need to try to capture every dollar I can for this concept. And at any moment, any board vote can say, no, we don't want to do this. We're telling you to stop. And you're not voting to approve me any certain amount of money today. I'm just telling you that this is the direction I'd like to go. Just trying to keep you informed. That's all.
And that's
James,
for
would you-
informational purposes. That's fine. I'm just telling you where I'm at on it. And
Right.
I want us to be able to maximize all the funds for sure, but I need more info to be able to do that.
James, would it be reasonable to ask you to notify the board over the next 6 months to a year if you need an expert data researcher, that we would be informed of, not that we're doing the investigation, but just informed of the use of the money and the type of expert that you're using for an investigation, such as a computer expert to look at slog files, or such as is probably the Dominion questions, or the voting system question that would come up the most, or looking at large amounts of data that one would want a proficient data utilizer that could run large numbers without a lot of difficulty.
If this board gets a slog file complaint, and we have, it's going to show numerous errors in numerous situations on particular machines. And I dare say no investigator who doesn't have some data expertise in their background is even going to know how to interpret that. And
Well, we
that's
already
why
have
there's the
that.
need.
I understand there's a need. I'm not saying that there's not. We already have multiple complaints on voter roll issues and things like that that are pending complaints now that need to be properly investigated that have been sitting on the back burner for a long time. So I get all of that, but you know, I can't, being a fiscally conservative person and us being having a fiduciary responsibility to the state of Georgia, I can't endorse something that I have no concept of the amount or the budget and where we stand.
So that I'm clear, basically what you're doing is you're trying to ensure that our budget is the same next year, even though this 300,000 has been pulled out. That's what I'm hearing. That's happening right now. There's a lot of things that we need to do that's gonna take up that 1 million, and not having the extra 300,000 is going to now we'll have to pull from that 1 million, and we don't know what that's going to look like 100, clearly, because we're not sure as of yet. So it sounds to me like you're presenting us with two plans that you would like to move forward on at some point. However, the estimation of how much it will cost, there's no way of creating a full budget. Like there's no way of really presenting that as of right now, because the time frame of learning that our budget has been cut and the time frame that you have to encumber the funds is just kind of put you in a bind. That's what I'm hearing, is that basically you need us to say, yes, we support you positioning yourself to roll out these projects at some point, and we'll have the funds to do it because the funds would have been recouped from 2026. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yes, just squeeze every dime we can out of the 26 surplus
To make up the difference.
without returning money back to the state treasury because we got a $300,000 cut facing us.
Yeah. So I 100% agree with Member Grubbs that it is hard to make a decision on this project not having a budget in front of us. However, I'm willing to support it because I would like us to have the funds. My concern is that we are going to be short coming this new fiscal year because of the amount that was put out. And keep in mind, 1.3 million, that wasn't, I thought we had a little bit more than that at one point. So we even though 300,000 been pulled out, $1 million budget is still much less than what we had beforehand. So we kind of need to recoup as much of these funds as possible if we want to sustain what we've been doing. And so that's why I'm in support of it. And having the ability to veto, having the ability to correct the budget ahead of time, going forward, that gives me some peace about it. But I don't want Member Grubbs to feel like I don't understand where she's coming from
It's fine.
at all, because I understand 100%.
I understand also, but I think that's why we hired James Mills, that he's the executive director, and we need to give him the direction but place our trust in him that he will manage the finances carefully and fiscally conservatively, as I think probably the three of us are all fiscal conservatives. So I think he will be wise about that, and understanding the number of times that he has met with the people in accounting and OPB, I have full confidence that he will not overspend, and this gives him the adaptability that if he finds that it's costing more than expected and we don't have the funds, that he can cut back. He's not committing to 10 salaries for a year that include all of the benefits that go with a salaried position. These are used as needed, so he can tailor this to the budget of the state election board and make adjustments as the year goes by. So I'm very much in favor of this.
So I make a motion that we approve this particular project I don't remember what it's called now, but but
So-
Dr. J, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay. All right. So, and I will second the motion. The motion is for the executive director, to enable a data, or an expert, researcher contract program, or with a temp agency, an expert to be utilized to, provide, assistance with investigations. The policies and procedures and programs will be determined by the executive director, and the director shall provide a summary to us, as an element of the executive director's report, that also will be presented at each meeting after, the minutes are read and approved.
Sarah's doing, she's got her hand up. Third roll call.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is there somebody on?
Sarah's phone is going.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
Again, I want to support it. I get the point of doing it. I can't vote in agreement with something that I don't have any frame of reference. And, you know, I'm sure Director Mills will do the right thing, but would just need more information.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
I
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Oh, Member Gonzalez here.
Yes, I left my ongoing meeting to join.
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Sarah, did you vote nay?
I did.
Oh, okay. So we have a, 2-2, vote, so the motion fails to carry.
And Madam Chair, that's all that I had to present. I thank the board for giving me this time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. The only thing I would like to add to the, Director Mills' report is, in the hiring of 2 part-time investigators, just in the last few days, there seemed to be an issue, with, HR at the Secretary of State's office, that initially there seemed to be some obstruction with our proceeding with hiring, that, apparently was resolved. However, there seemed to be a leak, of the hiring process of an applicant that was leaked to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution paper, that, could not have come from anywhere else but either the, Secretary of State's office or perhaps the chairman. I'm concerned that we get calls from the AJC, based on a mere applicant, for a job, which I fear will interfere with our hiring process each and every time. This seems to be a recurring problem with this board of leaking information to the press to, perhaps intend to, affect the functions and, activities and actions that this board is dealing with every day, every week. I'm disappointed in this sort of behavior. I don't find it, professional, or appropriate.
Madam Vice Chair, I would like to add to that. You know, when we have people that are associated with human resources that's giving applicants information to the press, I just think this is much bigger than just someone, a mole or a leak. it's an intentional discrediting of a person even before we are able to see this. In many of these cases, the board members are not aware of some of these applicants or who these applicants are. And so when we read about it in the paper, or we're getting a phone call asking us to comment on an applicant that we didn't even know was applying, that's a major problem. And it really does cross over into our lane. I know we have to work with the Secretary of State's office, but I just share in your frustration with this. We should be able to at least go through the hiring process without the media knowing before the board.
It is problematic and it's unethical. And we've had problems with the Secretary of State's office, with the HR department for quite a long time now. We've had applications that have been hidden, applications that have been withheld, and applications that have been unacknowledged, except for the serendipity or luck that we found out about it. And I find that interfering with the function of the state election board. And again, I find it unethical.
Dr. Johnston, was there ever a memorandum of understanding or anything done with the Secretary of State with the administrative responsibilities that they have to us?
As far as I know, there's no memorandum of understanding with the Secretary of State's office.
So we would just have to, there would be some kind of professional courtesy, I would think, that they would keep matters like that confidential until the state election board is ready to release that information. Is that not what everyone else would expect?
I'm sure you would expect that. I would expect that. I would expect the activities and the privacy of what the board is doing until it becomes public information. But to leak tidbits to the press in order to perhaps write an unflattering or critical article to be published on the day of a meeting or the day before a state election board meeting, I find very distasteful and unprofessional of not only of the paper, but whoever is leaking this information. But this is the same Secretary of State's office that illegally and secretly recorded a phone call of the President of the United States and then leaked it to the Washington Post with the wrong intention that did great damage to this country. And this is the very same office. It is unethical, and it is unacceptable.
Well, here's one question that I have, which is, of course, we need to keep our expectations low, and then perhaps we won't be disappointed based on, previous experience. But aren't personnel matters to be discussed in executive session as well? Perhaps Member Gazal can provide some more information on that. And while, yes, who we hire should be public, but however, there is part of the process that doesn't have to be done during executive session.
I mean, we discuss personnel matters during executive session, but Executive Director Mills has the thumbs up to begin the hiring process and hire without coming to us beforehand. That's part of his role. So, but he has to work with the SOS HR in order to get them onboarded. So what's happening is he's doing his job, and then when he goes through the onboarding process or he goes through them, that's how it's getting leaked.
I agree with that, but I'm saying that there should be a degree of confidentiality with the administrative arm that we are encumbered to use in hiring processes. So I would like to get some advice from our legal counsel on, perhaps sending a letter to the Secretary of State's office that these matters should not be leaked to the press or, I mean, who knows whether someone else did it. I did not do it. So I don't know who else may have leaked the information, but surely if it's coming out of the Secretary of State's office, then they should be cautioned to please not do that.
Well, as best I understand, this was um, a hiring process that Director Mills was undertaking, and it should have been in his control and should not become part of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution calling different people and asking open records requests on a potential new applicant, hiree, employee before the ink is dry on the paper.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there a vote that we need to take on this matter, or is this for information, I guess?
I guess the question is, should we file an ethics complaint? But I don't know who to file it against other than I don't know, the AJC or an unknown leaker. But I sure would like to find out who it is.
I
Well,
would
maybe the press will
think
tell us.
filing against a media outlet because the First Amendment protects them. That is how I learned of the board's hiring decisions, was from the media. I knew nothing about any of it. But they have a First Amendment protections. That's what they do, is they report.
Well, they certainly are. They qualify for being nosy, and that's how I found out about a lawsuit that the state election board filed against someone by reading the newspaper. I find that also very troubling.
Yeah, I think that the point is not that they're reporting the news, is the point. I mean, which is also debatable, but the point is that they are reporting information that the SEB has not provided to them. To get SEB information from another agency and then write about it without even contacting the SEB, now we're stepping outside of journalism. Now we're writing hit pieces, and to me it feels like we're dealing with a gossip blog rather than a actual journalist or journalism. So the problem is the process that this is happening. I mean, it happened before when they reported that we had cases that were in backlog, yet we didn't know about these cases. So, the fact that the media knows before the board, I do find that to be problematic.
I find it very problematic when the Atlanta Journal-Constitution writes a hit piece on our new hiree, Hope Cohen, as she was sitting at her dying mother's bedside, and they would not hold off, and they published this piece, even though they were specifically asked to refrain. And it was for nothing more than to discredit and hurt the state election board.
Right.
So, Member Gazal, they may have the protection of the press and their the freedoms that they've been allowed and provided by the Supreme Court, but that doesn't mean we have to like it or think it's appropriate or ethical. We can certainly express our opinions that it's very unethical.
Everyone's entitled to opinions. I'm just saying a formal legal ethics complaint wouldn't really go anywhere.
Right, but I sure would like to know who leaked it because they deserve an ethics complaint.
Absolutely.
All right. So thank you, Executive Director Mills. Next, to move on to the issue of the agenda item of drop bags and Dropbox surveillance. This question was brought up recently because Fulton County had, in the last few months, announced their plan to allow absentee ballot returns at any early voting site that does not have an official drop box. And they were designating every early voting site as an additional registrar site for receiving absentee ballots. And that resulted in plans for 22 additional sites to return absentee by mail ballots to what they initially called a drop bag. There's no provision in our election code for drop bags, so I believe the terminology changed in the last few days, and they just now call it delivery of absentee ballots, and they've dropped the word drop bag that was coined a few weeks ago. It's to be couriered and picked up by a team of temp employees hired by Fulton County every day of 19 days of early voting, which means there will be 418 election actions to be recorded, tracked, documented, and retained. There's no statute or rule that provides for drop bags, but this plan is now in place and carried out. So I just wanted to open the meeting for discussion of this. We've asked different opinions. We've received opinions from our legal counsel that provide that the statute 21-2-382 does provide for additional buildings as additional registrars' offices or place of registration for receiving absentee ballots. Member Gazal, would you like to speak? She's muted. She's muted.
I don't know if she's.
I'm sorry, I had to step aside because, again, I was not planning on, I was really not available. So you'll have to repeat the question if something was directed to me.
Yeah, yes. The question is, would you like to speak as to the drop bag plan that Fulton County has implemented for this primary election?
I am not Fulton County. I can't speak on behalf of them. I know that they had sent us their full procedures that they had voted on and were implementing, but I have not had the time to review them because I did. And if Fulton County is not here to speak on their own behalf, I certainly would not deign to do that in their stead. And my understanding, I've also heard reports that they halted the program today for fear of, because the reports I heard, this is secondhand, was that their election workers were frankly being intimidated because they were having their cars, the license plates recorded and that sort of thing. And they felt threatened by that. So they stopped a program that gave a little bit more accessibility to voters. I find that really disappointing.
Are there other counties that are doing it as well besides Fulton County?
Doing what? Accepting absentee ballots?
The drop bag plan.
I mean, I'm very confused by this language just because how the counties maintained the ballots that have been delivered by hand differs by county. Like I don't know what sort of container Gwinnett County, for instance, stores the ballots that have been delivered by hand in person at early voting locations. I have no idea how they store them. I know that they have a very thorough procedure and chain of custody, and they've been doing it for years. The same way, I know that DeKalb County accepts absentee ballots delivered in person at early voting locations, and they have for years. I don't know what medium they use to store the ballots during while the early voting locations are open. We would have to request a copy of the procedures, assuming that they have written procedures. I know that Gwinnett County has written procedures that their board has approved, and they train their early voting location workers on this, deputy registrars, but I don't have it in front of me. And that's why if the board wants to look at this, it really needs to have a thorough investigation. It needs to invite the counties that are undertaking it to come and present. I am not prepared to do that. I was not prepared to be here today, so.
Well,
That's
I wouldn't call this, I wouldn't say that an investigation is the issue, but I do think that it would be prudent of the state election board to review this and observe the process and review the counties that are also participating in a similar activity to see if there's a uniformity in this return of absentee ballots, to see if they indeed are compliant with the security issues that might be involved, whether there's really an inherent risk or security concern for these voters' absentee ballots, to ensure that they're actually properly documented and properly transported and properly processed and cast as votes. So it would just, I think, especially with a county as large as Fulton County, and a county like Fulton County that has had issues in the past with processes and documentation and chain of custody and transparency and record retention, I think it would be wise for this new plan that involves a lot of election actions to be tracked and documented, to be reviewed and make sure that it's being done in a secure and safe way. I would not accuse anybody of doing something that would suggest an investigation that's illegal, but I just think we need to be careful about any new processes that are not being performed across the state, that they're done in a legal and fair and transparent manner.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I have looked a little bit at some of the procedures that Gwinnett has in place and Fulton County has in place in regards to the drop bags, and they are different, even in the way of delivery. And at least as far as I'm concerned, the chain of custody issue is what should always be one of our utmost concerns. Every time the ballot leaves the voter's hands and touches somebody else's hands is a potential risk of increase of fraud. You hope that it never happens, but it does increase the risk. And with drop bags, it's my understanding that Gwinnett County, the poll manager or the precinct manager delivers those to their main hub, the drop bags. In Gwinnett County, it's my understanding that those are delivered by 2 temp workers that are hired. I understand that I think they receive some training, but to me, this is of utmost concern, and how they're being transported. Because again, every time the ballot exchanges hands, that chain of custody has to be there and must be of the utmost importance. And when one county adds 22 drop bag locations that they previously never had, and when that county happens to be on record as having more chain of custody issues than any other county in the state, in regards as issues that have come before this board on chain of custody, then I think this board has every right to pause and raise questions. And I appreciate you doing it.
I mean, to not have observers in place as a part of the chain of custody process is what leads to scenarios like what Member Gazal was saying as it relates to people copying down license plates and all the things above. It's because that obviously there's a crucial portion of the process that was not properly planned for, and that's observation. I think we forget that the only private part of elections is who you vote for. Everything else is supposed to be public. And if you are going to implement a new process, I'm not opposed to the implementation of new processes that makes it easier for people to cast their ballot. However, you have to think through every aspect of that process, which includes observation. So if they don't have an observation plan in place, then I do think it is the responsibility of this board, if their board is not doing it, as far as the county, to provide some oversight, some transparency, and some observation.
So as I mentioned before, I ran into this issue. I can't remember if it was 22 or 23. The years are kind of melding together when they started doing it in Cobb County. And part of the issue is, having these locations and not having the observation or the watching of this process. So as long as the county has a written plan in place for handling it and there's chain of custody and things are recorded properly according to law, then that's one thing. So I would think that the counties who are doing it, I don't know all the counties who are doing it. I appreciate the fact that the attorney for Fulton County sent theirs in. But I think those are processes that would certainly be something that we should request to review and make sure that they're doing this according to law. Can't hear you, Jan.
I pulled up the recent absentee voting statistics, and I see all the applications and ballots received in return, and then I pulled up the advanced voting statistics, and I see all the early voting sites and the ballots cast, and then I pulled up the unofficial absentee ballot drop box data that is being presented, and this is all very nice, but I do not see anywhere a record of the drop bag ballots, or whatever you want to call it, the alternative, the other return of absentee ballots to 22 early voting sites. There's nothing like this. So where is this report of ballots that are dropped off to a poll manager or an assistant poll manager?
Perhaps that's right for rulemaking.
Where is that transparency or the tracking and recording of that? I mean, today, voting couldn't be easier today. It's simply you drop your ballot in the mail. You either drop your ballot in a drop box, you drop it off at the election office, or you vote in person over 19 days at these early voting sites. Or you vote on election day. Voting is ridiculously easy. And to say that we're making it difficult for somebody to vote just doesn't fly. I'm just not buying that. It couldn't be easier in this state. And of course, you all know my opinion that absentee by mail voting should be a very infrequent way to vote. I mean, it should be that there are just too many variables and risk associated with it, and the voter doesn't actually cast their own ballot, do they? They give it to many hands to be passed through before it actually gets put through a scanner to be counted. And can an absentee by mail voter ever really know that their vote was actually cast and counted? I think not. And we've heard complaints through the years of absentee ballots found in drawers and found in dumpsters and found in ditches and found in shredders. So my advice would be to do not vote absentee by mail unless you absolutely have to, unless there's no other way. Cast your own ballot into the ballot box yourself. Be sure that you and only you touch your ballot. But to that end, I'm sad to hear that they have discontinued this new plan, because I would very much would have liked.
You're muted again.
Glanced at their plan, and I would love to observe that and compare it to the other counties, so that perhaps this would be a ripe rulemaking challenge for the state election board, if we still write rules these days. Nevertheless, if there's no further discussion, I don't think there's any more to do, except that if I would like to ask our new investigators to look into to review this process and observe where they can, if there are some counties that are voting at early voting sites with additional registrar offices. Is there any further discussion? The next on the agenda is election night reporting. Ms. Grubbs, I think you had some words or something you'd like to discuss about this.
Yeah, I would. I feel like that, as we discussed last time, I believe that the code section does provide that there should be watching of the election night returns. We've gone back and forth by email about this with the chairman and with all the members of the board, and included with the counsel for the Secretary of State. It's very bothersome to me. We're told in one way that there's no tabulating going on there. Well, I would like for someone to explain what goes on at the election night reporting room, where you take all of the numbers from each of the 159 counties and you aggregate them in a total. And I would like to, address, some issues that I see with that, there is tabulation going on there, because you take all the numbers from all the counties, you add them together. I understand that there are issues with sometimes with the county reporting the numbers. And I was told that the Secretary of State doesn't change the numbers, but it's my understanding that the Secretary of State will reach back out to the counties and ask them to change the numbers, which to me, it's no distinction of difference there. It is the Secretary of State, doing that. And in some cases, I'm sure it's legitimate. They may have forgotten to upload advanced voting numbers or absentee numbers, or, whatever the case may be. There may have been some error, but there needs to be oversight of that. And so we were told via email through the chairman that we would not be receiving an invitation. Yet I know of several news outlets that have received invitations to be there for election night reporting. And we have the chief elections officer of the state of Georgia overseeing that entire operation, who happens to be on the ballot for governor. And I think that that is a huge conflict of interest. And I believe that the state election board does have oversight duties and responsibilities there. And whether it's me, I don't care. Whether it's the parties providing the oversight, whatever, but there needs to be some documented oversight of that process. And personally, I believe that we need to obtain independent review by independent counsel. And so this is where, that budgeted amount of money could be very helpful. I believe there's conflicts of interest that exist, that I think that we need a free and fair and independent review of the legal obligations of the board, our oversight obligations, and I would like to get that done immediately.
I happen to agree. I think that this entire process has been difficult because we've inquired about this, about being a part of or having representatives there. We mentioned having a Republican representative and the Democrat representative in the room in order to create balance. And we've talked about this. The fact that it took, our chairman 3 weeks to contact them.
Longer than that.
Right, from when we first asked. Not to mention him, talking to them. And then what I found to be a bit odd is that in the explanation, we are told that this location has to remain private for safety purposes because of whatever happens there. But we're also told that nothing happens there. And two things can be true, but not in this case. It can't be that it's so serious business going on there and we need to keep it private, keep the location private. But at the same time, there's nothing to see here. And, at some point, I would like to see a government agency that is paid for by the people to say something other than no. I would love to hear them say, sure, come in, let's be transparent. But for some reason, the nothing to see here is so much of nothingness that we have to just take their word for it. That's not how a republic works. And so asking for transparency, the concerns that we have are concerns that I'm hearing throughout the state. We have a sitting SOS who is also running for governor. We have a former SOS person running for SOS. The SOS can invite whomever into this room. We are unaware of who that person is or who those people are or if they're doing it. It's too much distance between transparency, oversight, and protection and this office. So if there's nothing to see there, then I would like to see what this nothingness is. It doesn't have to be my eyeballs. I understand that. I would not request to be in there. However, I do think that someone needs to be there. And I question whether or not, and this is why I agree with Member Grubbs as far as getting legal counsel on this, because I'm questioning whether they have the authority to say that there can't be any oversight of the state election board. So that's where I am at this point. I think we politely asked to be there. However, I'm not sure if we needed to be invited. As I've heard another board member say, this is not a party. This is but what we're supposed to be doing. So I'm all for seeking some legal guidance on this.
Well, just again to reiterate for the public, in the code section, at 212406, public performance of duties by officials, superintendents, poll officers, and other officials engaged in the conducting of primaries and elections held under this chapter shall perform their duties in public. Now, we all know that the voting occurs on the local level in the precincts. But if you're going to treat this any different, as far as the election night reporting room, where the election night reporting is happening for the entire state, then what do you call the central location of a county where they are accepting the returns of the precincts? There's no difference in that being an open and transparent process. And then for further reading, if people want to read, read for yourself. People need to investigate for themselves. 212408, and we owe it to the candidates to ensure that they have confidence that any issues in this regard are being observed and being watched. And So I'm of the opinion that we need to obtain an independent legal opinion. And, there are prior board members who have been in locations. I know that the chairman has been there before. I understand that the facility may have certain security issues, but if the press is invited and they gain entry, there's no reason why observers should not be given entry as well. So I believe this is a huge deal, and I would like to ask that the director appropriate some funds to get an independent legal opinion for this purpose.
I would like to share four codes with this group concerning the Secretary of State. 21250 says the Secretary of State is the quote, the state's chief election official. Chief election official. 406, just like Member Grubbs just stated, public performance of duties by officials is required. And 212499 describes the duty of the Secretary of State as to tabulation, computation, and canvassing of votes for the state and federal offices. And finally, 212421 says, as soon as possible after the close of polls, the election superintendent shall report to the Secretary of State results, and comparisons shall be reported to the Secretary of State in a prominent public place. We have reached out to various council and others as to the question about election night reporting, and sadly, the election code doesn't specifically state that the members of the board be allowed or are required to attend. So the code is not helpful for the state election board, and therefore I guess we're supposed to be invited as if to a party. We did reach out to the Attorney General. They are not taking a stance on this topic. And I reached out to the Democrat Party, and they also are not taking a stance on this, although they would certainly send a representative if representatives of each party were included. And then the Republican Party did issue a statement and said, and confirmed that they felt strongly that there should be observation of election night reporting by the state election board. So that's where we stand, and I would entertain a motion, Member Grubbs, if you have one.
Yeah, I make a motion that the executive director engage with legal counsel to obtain independent legal advice as to this matter as soon as possible.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to seek legal guidance concerning this issue with independent counsel. Is there further discussion?
I would just like to say this is should be completely unnecessary, but it is a pattern of behavior from the Secretary of State to I guess it's become personal with the SEB, maybe because he's no longer on the SEB. I don't know. That was a legislative decision, of course. It's completely unnecessary. And I did make a post publicly that if you have nothing to hide, you hide nothing. And if everything is A-OK as it should be, and there's no discrepancies and there's no issues, then there should be no problem, allowing oversight of this matter. Now, there was someone I know who sent an email complaint about this to the Secretary of State's office, and the response was, no tabulation happens at the location being mentioned. Of course, I don't know what this person understands as tabulation when you're aggregating the total number of votes from 159 counties. He says not one ballot, not one count. However, I would like this person to answer the question, did the Secretary of State's office phone back or email back to counties in any election in the last 5 or 6 years and tell them to change their numbers or to change their reporting? Because whether the Secretary of State physically does it at this location or whether or not they tell a county to do it and the county just does it at their direction, that is something that should be available to the public and the public to be aware of. And so I would like for them to answer that question. Of course, I don't expect a response because they are not transparent, and that's just a fact.
The issue with being located at GEMA, Georgia Emergency Management, is simply, it appears to be a way to avoid being public with the election night reporting. There's no need for GEMA to be present with election night reporting and the tabulation of votes. GEMA is really necessary for incidents or emergencies, reporting of floods, reporting of tornadoes, reporting of power outages, reporting of bomb threats at polling places. But that really is not the issue of election night reporting to the Secretary of State and accepting all of the returns from 159 counties in the state. Is there any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the question to all in favor of obtaining independent legal opinion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you. The last item on the agenda are rule petitions that were submitted within the last week by member Grubbs. There are 4 rule petitions, and we need to afford her some time to speak. It's my understanding that she will be requesting that these actually be placed on the agenda for the June meeting because of the several issues, because the governor has now announced a special session called special session. Also, these were submitted rather recently, and the board needs to have time to study these petitions, and also the entire board should be present to hear petitions that are pertaining to something as important as the conduct of elections, vote definition, and ballot secrecy. So, Ms. Grubbs, Member Grubbs, would you like to address, make your still make a statement or speak to these rule petitions or speak of the merits of these rule petitions?
Yes, I would.
Oh, Member Grubbs,
Please
real
proceed.
quick, there aren't any votes are going to be necessary, right? I have to jump off in 20 minutes. So I just want to make sure that I'm not, missing anything. I'm so happy that this is going to take place in June so I can be present and be a part of it because I have read through the rules, but I just want to make sure I note that.
Well, actually, I mean, yes and no, as far as it waiting until June. Actually, this really can't wait until June. And the thing is, everybody seems to be forgetting that we have a special election that's coming up for the Congressional 13 race. That's why some of these are referenced as temporary rules. And yes, the legislature is coming into session the day after the primary, but that is not going to be in time for the Congressional 13 race. And so I think it's very important that counties prepare to conduct that election. The counties that are affected by that particular election, I think it's very important that they be prepared to conduct that race by hand marked paper ballots, because they're going to fall into that period of time where that race is going to happen before, after July 1st, but before anything can possibly be put in place by the legislature. I still, and these are very similar to the rules that were proposed previously, of course. You have Exhibit 1, and for the people on the YouTube channel who are chatting, you can go to my X post, you can go to the Facebook link on Facebook for the State Election Board, and the rules are posted there. The temporary proposed rule, as it was sent to everyone on the board, the red font is the temporary rule, the blue font would be the permanent rule. And the first one is a change to 183-1-15-.02 on the definition of a vote. Paragraph 2 would be a permanent rule change that says a vote cast on an optical scan ballot shall be detected and tabulated directly from the original paper ballot and not an electronic copy of the ballot. The issue there is that there is not appropriate chain of custody, and the ballots we can't have tabulation from images, which, as I understand, could be a possibility being submitted, that the tally would be done for the votes would be done by ballot images, which is the same thing as saying, here, let me pay for my check with a photocopy of money and not with actual dollar bills. So that is the one change. Then we have the addition of the temporary rules for paragraph H. And if we can get Sean to put up the images, the slides for the graphics that I sent. So if you can go to the first one, the language, this is directly taken from Senate Bill 189. And the reason that this is very important is because the definition of a ballot actually changed in Section 7, and we have never adopted a rule to conform the state board election rules to what the actual legislation said. Then if you can go to the next one.
Apologies for the interruption. Would you like any of these attached to the transcript?
That would be great.
Oh, perfect. I'll give you my email after for.
Okay, that would be great. So the rule in paragraph H, the proposed rule, is being proposed for this special election because Senate Bill 189 we have what the current rule is, which was previous to the Senate Bill 189 language. And Senate Bill 189 actually changed things, so it requires a new rule. This conforms the rule to the July 1st law, requiring the text as the official vote, although it is impossible to comply with the law. Counties cannot, as it is, comply with the new law and the new rule, therefore, impossible and impracticable invoke the backup balloting measure. So that is under Exhibit 1. And Sean, if we can go to the visual of the temporary proposed rule for 183-1-12-.01. Perfect. If we can, it would be under Exhibit 2. There you go. Yeah, if you, under paragraph 2, this language makes it clear that BMDs are not absolute and unconditional. They must comply with the law. Then adding paragraph 5 below, that would invoke the backup system for the July election. And that's why I say changing the rules, if we wait until the June meeting, would be too late. Because we're not providing accommodation for what will happen with the July election of that congressional race, because early voting actually starts before July 28th. So to get the rules in place, we're right here at the, not just the 11th hour, but the 12th hour. And then paragraph 6, if you'll scroll down, Sean, that the use of ballot on demand printers would be available for early voting. And then if you'll scroll down to 183-1-12-11 on conducting elections. In paragraph 2B, it adds the language for voters voting on an electronic ballot marking device. Just simply noting here that the procedure is for a BMD and not a hand-marked paper ballot for people that require assistive voting. And then paragraph C, under the provisions, this is just conforming the temporary election rule, making it clear that it applies to special election, not just emergency balloting provisions. And then when you scroll down a little bit, just cleaning up the language to show that it's to clarify that the vote is to be cast in the scanner, not just put in the emergency bin. And then further down, for statewide, or the federal candidate is on the ballot, and electronic ballot markers are the primary method of in-person voting. This deals with cutting down on waste for emergency ballots. And the previous election day requirement of 10% of all registered voters is very high, and that's a very wasteful amount. It should be reduced to 10% of active voters who have not voted during early voting, therefore securing people's concerns about having too many paper ballots out there for the backup system, and also addressing statewide versus the all state elections. So again, that just makes sense to do that. Because you want to eliminate the waste and eliminate any potential issues for any fraud or anything like that. Then subparagraph D, this deals with unforeseen circumstances. We had some conversations previously about the superintendent and the superintendent's designees. This is for actual emergency conditions while using BMDs, about the issue of having to call board meetings to make those determinations. It's still further down, halfway in subparagraph D. It addresses that the determination is in the discretion of the election superintendent, which of course is the board. Then we can scroll on through to subparagraph 4. This also deals with the absolute secrecy with voting by BMD, to clarify that the privacy of the voter means that the ballot secrecy is required by statute, which it is, that shall be maintained. So just a few cleanup language points there. If we scroll down to the review, and again, this gets into some pretty big detail, but in paragraph 8, actually, where it says voting on a BMD, this is, there was some concern about people having to employ additional people to have them review ballots and that kind of thing. How the poll worker will be there to say, review your ballot and that kind of thing. This is the effort to ask if the voter check the ballot is not needed for hand-marked paper ballots. If they're voting for hand-marked paper ballots, that need is not there. The BMD check is to review to see if the machine actually marked what the voter instructed. That would not be necessary for hand-marked paper ballots. Down to paragraph 10A. There's a couple of minor changes there. And then if we move on to paragraph 11, subparagraph C, just to clarify the transparency and the poll watchers' rights to actually see what is happening, and then their ability to report any discrepancies. And then if we go down to Exhibit 4 on ballot secrecy, there's some additions to the temporary rules. This is a very, very important rule because this also addresses the DVS order problem that we've talked about. This adds the language for protecting the absolute secrecy, updates to the statute, and to ensure that the accessible device is private. And again, ensuring the privacy for people who need assistance with voting. Then paragraph 3 addresses the Congressional District 13 special election and handling that situation. And then the Secretary of State updating the software for the assistive devices for those BMDs that are necessary. This addresses in paragraph 4 the update of the software, handling the DVS order problem, and that kind of thing. So I know I ran through it pretty quickly, and I know that these items have previously somewhat been addressed, not really actually going through the rules in this manner. But also there is some issues going on where there might be some attempt to do a double blind counting of the ballot images like we've talked about. You've got to always count from the source document. There are, again, my illustration of paying with a picture of money. And then in Fulton County, we know that we have images of ballots that just didn't exist. So, and again, those things would be going on over the internet. So at this point, I'm asking for the standing committees in the legislature to be part of this conversation. The ones that do have oversight and that are standing committees is the Senate Ethics Committee and the House Governmental Affairs Committee. And again, while I disagree that just because a special session has been called, that's going to alleviate all these issues, it is not, because the Congressional 13 race is happening before anything feasibly can be done by the legislature, number one. And those two committees, they can oppose the rule proposals, they can stay them, but we need their help and participation in this. And each one of these is an amendment to the current rules. And again, everyone seems to be afraid of the eternal vigilance issue and that kind of thing, and trying to scare us into not doing our job. And I would ask the board really comprehensively review these rules because there were many issues that were never addressed. The rules were never fully presented, despite what was said. Yes, there was a presentation, but that was more heavily on our authority than it was on the actual rules. And we're actually behind in making rules that apply to elections. And we need to have a lot of focus on that. That's why I would like to say we need a staff attorney who can help us in drafting some of those rules. And that's, again, as to the funding, where I would like to see the money spent is on a staff attorney who can assist with doing that and working with these two standing committees. Now, I would ask for a vote, but I don't feel like that would be fair to do without a full complement of the board. I do know where the chairman stands. I don't know where Ms. Gazal stands, but while these are urgent matters, and I think these rules are very important, I don't think it would be fair to call for a vote without them being in attendance. But I do think this is something that's pressing, and I do not think it can wait until the January meeting.
In regards to the attorney, I know that's something that we've fought for as well. Member Johnston and I were in a meeting with the speaker a few years ago, and we asked specifically about that. And he made it very clear that in order for us to have an outside attorney, we would have to engage in conflicts counsel or get approval from the AG because they are our attorney. So just to kind of bring you up to speed on that one, that has been something we have fought for a very long time. But because the AG office is our attorney, we don't have the authority to dismiss them.
Well, and I'm not trying to dismiss them. I'm just saying that there clearly is not enough time to, and get seeking advice and counsel on drafting rules and things of that nature, I think are very important. But we're the low man on the totem pole, and let's get real. There's a huge conflict that does exist. And we need advice in drafting common sense rules and reviewing common sense. These rules are common sense given the state of the code in the state of Georgia. And if you ask me personally, we're going to have a legislative session. And if you expect me to hold out any hope that these issues are going to be addressed and handled, I don't. Because we had the Blue Ribbon Committee on Elections. We wasted a lot of time with that, with nothing changing. We've gone through now 2 sessions on, since SB 189 was passed. And I love the fact that SB 189 says what it says, but our rules are not even in compliance with SB 189. And the reason is because we have been beat over the head with the fact that we can't make rules. And I think that's, as a person I heard speak a lot, say that's stinking thinking. We are not complying with what our obligations are to the state if we don't make rules that are in compliance with the code. I don't want to go outside the code to make rules, but I want us to make rules that are in compliance with the code, and we are behind on that. And something's got to be done to address
put
that.
forth a lot of rules since we've been here. I mean, they got shot down in the courts, but I don't want to make it seem like we're not. I don't know if we have a quota or some quota we're not meeting, but I will say that this board has certainly presented a lot of rules, and I'm sure the media will contest to that. But
Well,
attest to that.
the record number of rules was passed in 2020 by the Secretary of State when they brought Dominion to the state. And these
And they changed our method of voting in 2020.
And Chairman, yes, actually they did. Chairman Verveer did send an email with his opinion. He is opposed to these rules. I'll just share this with this group here. He says they're not authorized by statute. 1, he says 2, the rules change the way that voting is conducted in an election. And 3, adoption of these rules would likely lead to litigation given that they're not grounded in statute. It sounds like we've heard that a dozen times, Member King. But actually, this reminds me, and should remind all of you, of the 2020 election. The Secretary of State violated the elections clause by unilaterally changing the conduct of elections without using the state legislature to pass laws. He passed laws that were not grounded in statute and used the cover of COVID to do that, including mailing 7 million absentee ballots and making signature verification meaningless, allowing processing of absentee ballots while active voting was taking place, failing to keep an accurate record of who voted, and introducing drop boxes that there had been no statute for drop boxes up until that day. So sadly, we've heard it all before, and eternal vigilance in the Supreme Court have added to the chaos and confusion of elections in Georgia. I call this a peach jam and a hot pickle. But we've heard countless hours of expert testimony that have said without hand-marked paper ballots, an optical scan reading of the ballots with meaningful, of course, cross-check and auditing, there's no way these current machines can be used to allow voters to know how their ballots are being read. The current system violates Help America Vote Act law. Kicking the can down the road doesn't solve that legal issue of the Dominion Liberty system of using QR codes to tabulate votes. Kicking the can down the road like SB 189 did originally just leads to more chaos and confusion and distrust in our election system. And now the legislature has been called into special session by the governor. We know what they must do, but we'll have to wait on the outcome of the session to see what happens. And the rumors are swirling about double-blind counting. It's a notion that fails from beginning to end by continuing to tabulate votes with the QR code and then secondarily tabulating not ballots, but ballot images. That is not legal. It's not EAC certified, and it's not compliant with HAVA by any means. So as we all have done here, is we've taken an oath as members of the state election board to swear to support the Constitution of this state and the United States, and that means that we follow the laws and we faithfully discharge the duties of this office, and we should take that seriously. So we could not support election conduct that's not consistent with federal and state laws. I would just say it's not surprising that probably we'll find troublemakers that will bring lawsuits as they have in the past to find a way to challenge whatever occurs in the session. But as for that, now I don't think there's anything that we need to do today.
Well, I would like to point out, Dr. Johnston, that in the chairman's, we had the thing going back and forth, the email going back and forth, and he says temporary rules are not authorized in either statute or rules promulgated by the board. And I did, send back an email and ask for our counsel to say, where do you get that from? And one of the responses I had is the fact that this is a change in circumstance. Since we met last time and, there were similar same rules presented before, that was prior to the special election for Congressional District 13 that is happening in this in-between time after July 1st and probably before there will be any available. I mean, you're just talking about a matter of days. You're telling me the legislature is going to go into session on June 18th or 17th, and then they're going to be able, that county boards of election are going to be able to implement changes for the Congressional 13 race in the counties that affects when they start early voting the first week of July. You want to talk about impossible and impracticable? That's impossible and impracticable. So this board has the obligation to advise counties on making preparations. And, waiting until the June 3rd meeting is going to be too late. We have the counties need direction per, OCGA 21-281, which is the backup system. The General Assembly has already ordered us to do that. To advise counties. And I can't think of any other situation that is more pressing at this time. The chairman says that the rules change the way voting is conducted. We can't ignore what the legislature already told us and what's impossible and impracticable. There's very much a picking and choosing of what rules we can enforce, what rules we can not enforce, or what rules exist. And I have requested, a comprehensive response to this that I haven't seen yet. And so, it's very disturbing to me that we are given a job that we should take very seriously in following the Constitution and following the oath that we take to serve on this board. And yet there are those who want to do anything but that. So again, I'm not asking for a vote on this at this time because, we're not here just to ram something through without, full advice of the entire board. In my view, I think it's very important to have all views. Likewise, I think it's very important that we have access to election night reporting. So, I put it out there for information. I've posted the proposed rules on Twitter. They're on the Facebook page of the State Election Board. I think full transparency is the order of the day, but I do think this matter needs to be taken up again very much prior to the June 3rd meeting.
Well, I think our time is up. Member King, do you have any more?
No.
Nothing to add. Executive Director Mills? Happy to add. Okay. Do I hear, that's all the items on our agenda. Thank you so much for being here and discussing some of our business items and issues that we're dealing with this current election. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
It's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.